So yesterday we learned about author's purpose, which is the reason why an author writes. And we went over the three main author's purposes, which spell the acronym PI. You'll remember that P stands for persuade, I stands for inform, and E stands for entertain or express. Today we're going to dig into the difference between inform and persuade and talk about how that is informed based on the author's tone. Tone means the attitude or feeling the author has about the subject, which is what he or she is writing about. Since readers aren't in the author's head, we have to make inferences about his or her feelings based on the author's words. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, what attitude do the words express? Now, informational texts are defined by a tone full of facts. So some words we would use to describe that tone are objective, neutral, factual, academic, and informative. On your note sheet, you're going to see an empty square right here below all of those words. What I'd like you to do is draw this diagram that has two ends. It has a negative side and it has a positive side. And you'll see that the scale is even, right? So it's not leaning towards the negative side or the positive side because it is informational. It's not trying to lean one way or another. Another possible tone, an example of this, is that around 75% of the volcanoes on Earth are found in the Pacific Ring of Fire, an area around the Pacific Ocean where tectonic plates meet. You'll notice that this is defined by facts. Let's highlight those facts together. Here we get a statistic. Around 75% of volcanoes on Earth are found in the Pacific Ring of Fire. There are no opinion words whatsoever. There's no words that show a value. Even this last sentence is a fact as well. The second passage, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is the world's largest reef system. This right here is another fact, largest reef system. It doesn't say the best reef system. It doesn't say the worst reef system. It says the largest. That's something we can prove. So we can tell that both of these examples have a factual, objective, or neutral tone. Another possible tone is a pro tone. Pro means for. So in persuasive text, if a tone is pro, then it's full of opinions. And the tone would be complimentary, praiseful, positive, admiring, and biased for. Bias means showing an unfair preference. So if you look down here, you're going to draw this exact same scale. This time you'll notice it's not even. Right? The scale is leaning towards the positive side because here the author is biased in a positive way. The author is being admiring and complimentary with his or her words. An example of that. We have some words here that we're going to highlight that are positive in their tone. It says volcanoes are amazing, powerful forces of nature that we should respect and study. Those are not things that I can prove. Those are not facts. They're opinion words. They show a biased tone towards volcanoes or complimenting volcanoes. Second passage, everyone should snorkel in the Great Barrier Reef and see all the beautiful fish and impressive sea life. Once again, we have adjectives that are complimentary and show a bias towards. So we can tell that both of these passages are designed to persuade rather than inform. On the opposite side, you can have persuasive text with a con tone. That is texts that are full of opinions, but they go against. Con comes from contra, which means against. So here the author's tone would be negative, critical, damaging, insulting, or biased against. So you'll see here our scale is once again not even. The scale is not neutral. Instead, it's tipping towards the negative side because it is biased against. Examples of that. Volcanoes are horrific, disasters. You see those words are very negative in tone. That shouldn't even exist because they do nothing but harm. Hopefully your highlighting can be straighter than mine, guys. But as you can see, this passage has negative words, right? It has a negative tone against volcanoes. Let's look at the second passage. Sinking money into the protection of the Great Barrier Reef is wasteful and irresponsible. What good does a bunch of fish do for us? Here, we have strong examples of a negative tone in which the author shows a bias against the Great Barrier Reef. So, all these examples we've seen are to help prepare you as readers to tell the difference between inform and persuade. In addition to reading about tone, we also want to practice thinking like a writer. That is using our own words as writers to write in an objective, informational way and to write in a persuasive, biased way. So you and your partner, when you do this on your own, you're going to get a topic. The topic that I'm choosing to start with is the topic homework. So if I'm going to think like a writer, and I'm going to write something informational about homework, I want to make sure that I'm only using facts, not using any opinion words. So I'm going to write something like this. You can write this with me. I might start off with like a simple definition. So I could say homework is work beyond the school day assigned by a teacher. Students complete homework as independent practice. So you'll notice in this passage, I don't have any opinion words. I don't have any words that show how I feel about homework because that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be informational and objective. But let's pretend that that's not my purpose. Let's pretend that my purpose is to be persuasive and biased. Here, I could choose to be biased towards homework, or I could choose to be biased against homework. Since I'm a teacher, I'm going to go ahead and choose to be biased towards homework. So I'm going to use words that are really positive and complimentary. I might say something like this. Homework is a vital, necessary part of any child's education. We should all be grateful for it. Let's take a look at some of my words that really show this biased tone that is strongly persuasive. Instead of just defining what homework is, I said homework is a vital, necessary part of any child's education. These are positive words that I can't really prove. They're opinion words. Then I also say we should all be grateful. Once again, using words like should and grateful, those aren't factual, objective words. Those are words that have a strong, opinionated tone. So this is just one example of thinking like a writer and trying to be very intentional about your purpose. You can be informational and objective using facts. You can be persuasive using opinions. Now it's your turn. Working with your partner, you are going to read a variety of passages. And as you read, you're going to try to figure out what is the author's purpose, what's the author's tone, and where's my evidence for that. To prepare you for this, I'm going to go through the first passage with you. So let's read this together. It says the first traffic lights didn't direct cars. Instead, they told carts pulled by the horse when to stop and when to go. The first electronic traffic light was put up in 1914. It had only two colors, red and green. A police officer had to stand at the corner and work the light by hand. Soon traffic lights could be found on busy corners all across the country. Before I even look at these choices, I want to think to myself, did this passage seem to have mostly facts or mostly opinions? I'm thinking that this passage had mostly facts. I'll find some examples and highlight them. Here, it told me about the first traffic lights. And it said that the first traffic lights didn't direct cars. Instead, they direct horses. It also gives me a date here. It says the first electric traffic light was put up in 1914. It had two colors. Here, I notice that we have a date, we have a statistic, a number, and what the passage seems to be doing is giving me mostly facts instead of opinions. So when I go to author's purpose, I'm going to go ahead and select persuade. Ooh, Did that match what I put? No. Because I chose mostly facts, I shouldn't pick persuade. I should be picking inform. There we go. Now let's look at the author's tone. The tone can be objective or neutral, biased towards, which is complimentary, or biased against, which is critical. Because I chose inform and because I noticed mostly facts, I know that this tone is objective or neutral. Now for evidence. I want to pick one piece of evidence to highlight, and I'm going to go ahead and say that this evidence is a fact. I want to make sure that I put my author's words in quotations. So I'm going to say here my second fact that I highlighted. The first electric traffic light was put up in 1914. I like that evidence because it's a very clear fact with a date. So you and your partner are going to go through the rest of this challenge, making sure to use your highlighter and to cite evidence in the text. Good luck!